So let's take some questions here, and I want them to be not easy. If you don't want them to be, that's okay too. Yeah, go ahead.
You create a strategy or marketing that kind of keeps the school district out of the line of fire, but yet and still keeps the information flowing without making the school district a hit piece?
It's an awesome question. One small role I try to take is to suck up a little bit of the media's time, because we have a lot of school districts who don't want to talk to the big papers and the big television networks, because oftentimes those networks are seeking the big thing, right? The CRT story, the sex ed story, and the district doesn't want to be in the crosshairs of that. So I try to take a lot of that. Our office tries to do that. When there's a local story, when something bad happens to a kid, when kids aren't being picked up on the bus, right? When there's the district has to account for that, and we try to support them and work with them. But mostly when we see these sort of scary things out there, we try to bring that to the state level so that those reporters are telling stories that we can often contextualize as, isn't this just political ideology, to keep the school district out of it. It's awfully tough, though, if we're electing school boards where a majority of them are militia members. We have a district like that, where a growing number of them say, I'm here to kind of break this system down because my kids are in private school, but I'm a school board member of a public district. Like, we're seeing more and more of that. It's tougher because some of them want the limelight on them because they're trying to do dysfunction to the schools. And it's not many. I don't want to overstate that. It's not many, but it's a little troubling. Yeah. Yeah, please.
I'm in the Clover Park School District. And what I've noticed in the Clover Park School District is that there's a lack of good marketing. And there's a lack of good community relations as far as their marketing. And so I have tried to help them with their agenda setting, but because I feel like part of the people setting the agenda are aligned with the malalignment of the district.
Yeah.
There's this misalignment of intentional.
Yep.
So my question is there a way at the state level that there can be maybe some accountability on the local level, but also some training on the local level?
It's awesome. Couple things there. A, we do training now, and we have partner groups who are much closer to, say, issues of DEI, for example, now required of our school boards, another thing that the right wing hammered us on, right? But there is some training, and it's done by a pretty objective group. Like, this is the Association of School Board Directors, so that the board directors aren't just hearing sort of an insular conversation amongst themselves. It comes from the outside, and there's a required number of hours, so that's helping a little. We work with school districts to say part of your story is a communication story. In a state that still has you go to your voters every 2, 3, or 4 years for 15% of your budget and levy, it is okay to have a comms team that tells the whole story of your district, your successes, your state championships, and your struggles. And if we see them sort of too biased one way or the other, then we have an opportunity to talk with them and say, something's happening here, and usually we see it in their levy struggle. We're like, you're not telling the whole story of your district, which is why your levy struggles. So there's a little bit of that can go on. I'll work directly with a superintendent if I feel like the board is taking the district away from its mission. And then the last category that we spend some intervention time on is we do have a few boards that step over the line in their policy, and they are actually violating the civil rights of students or educators and protected classes. And we've intervened generally short of an investigation, but sometimes with investigation to say this policy is in violation of a protected class, and we get them to change that. So when it's extreme enough, and you mentioned a school district where our attorneys did have to contact them about potential actions they were going to take, and we steered most of those to the proper place, but not all of them. So yes, there's ways to intervene. And I would say to all of you, it is okay to have communications directors. Sometimes in the public sector we think, ooh, that feels like lobbying. No, that's storytelling. As long as you tell the story of the struggle and you tell the story of the success, the community gets the whole story. And I think that's important. And again, I've said it 5 times, and run for school board. Nothing changes the dynamic of a superintendent and their executive team like the board. That's who hires them. That's how it's supposed to work. And we have a lot of soups in the last 2 years who have left their positions in this state because they said, I can't work for that board anymore. That it's in violation of what I believe in. And a lot of it was around masking and all of that. But I've seen some pretty amazing leadership of school superintendents who have said, the politics and the ideology of board elections is now making it so that I can't be here anymore. So we've never had higher turnover ever in the state of our soups as we have right now. And it's calming down, but there was a big old turnover, and a lot of it was in rural districts. So it is part of the tough choice they make. Yeah, here, and then there was a question back here. Yeah, go ahead.
So just a question about social emotional learning. I was just wondering how you feel about changing the start times of, say, middle and high school students. Well, I work in sleep disorders, so, and, fundamentally, we all need sleep. And so, kids get tested for vision, they get tested for hearing. And I wonder if there's a way, or, if you think that it's possible to survey students the quality of their sleep.
That's very good, very good. I'll start as a parent of 2 teens. Oh, the question is sleep, kids and sleep, and there's a sort of an implication on bell schedules, and then is there a way to survey students to talk about the quality of their sleep? So I want to hit all of those, and I'll kind of go in reverse order. We have a healthy youth survey that we administer every 2 years in partnership with the Department of Health and our state's health insurance procurement office. And I will say it's a long process to get questions changed, but we could. We ask them a lot of powerful and amazing questions. And it informs so much of what we do on this SEL stuff and how we approach it. I don't think we've asked them about sleep, but I'm going to check because it wouldn't surprise me if the Department of Health has had those questions in there. As a parent of 2 teens, I do wish school started later. My daughter has amazing attendance in periods 2 through 6. First period is like, eh. So that's real. Again, I keep pointing to this, and everywhere I go I talk about this has fundamentally changed the world of kids. And I will just say with bias, I think on balance to the negative, not to the positive, although there's great content here and great social connection, this is keeping them awake much, much later than they ought to. So even as the schools understand more about this, this is a force to be reckoned with. So the last thing I'll say is some districts have experimented with later school start times to accommodate this. A few have stuck with it and a few had to peel it back. Weird things happen when you go to school later. Buses get stuck in a lot more traffic so that it's really, really later. And then it gets in the way of athletics and it gets in the way of students who work after school. It messes with a lot of parents who say it kind of lines up now. I go to work, I drop kid off, or kids at bus stop and I can wait. And as they put that later, a lot of communities struggle with that. So I am not excuse making. I am telling you that this capitalist economy has built an entire economic system around getting kids to school at a certain time and getting them home at a certain time. And undoing that's really hard. So local districts, because this is their purview, bell schedules, they are experimenting with it, but it's really, really tough. And if you've never heard this before, I'll say it. Transportation and sports control school districts. That is where they start in terms of how they build their model, and then they fit in academic learning in between. It's kind of a little bit facetious, but it really is a big driver of how they deploy. So yeah, we're going to go here and then come back here. Yep.
I was a para-engineering coach for school district. For about 2 years, I taught ELL to second and third graders. I think, it was such a good learning experience for them, and I had almost 100% with all my students. It should be expanded from all kindergarten to 5th grade, so that they have some experience with getting some bilingual experience.
That is exactly what we're doing. So the old model was federal money comes into the state, you identify kids who are primarily Spanish speakers, that's the biggest language barrier by immigration status. You starve them of their content until they learn enough English, and then you put them back in, and the second we did that, and we've been doing this for 40 years, we are shocked that those kids are then behind in math and science and ELA, right? So disproportionately identifying them for special education services, and that is a trap for them for just about ever. So our whole model is we went to New Mexico, who does this best, and we said, how can we change the cycle? Because we heard they did this the best, and they said, you want to focus on two-way dual language. Stop seeing the English learner as in deficit, see them as strength. They bring Spanish, they bring Russian, they bring, whatever. The English student is also a learner. When you put 12 of these kids in and 12 of these kids and they're in the same classroom together in two-way dual language, the exponential rate at which they learn each other's language, because there's peer support, is amazing, and they're in their core content. So you'll go to one of these schools, and I encourage you to do this. On Monday might be Spanish Day, but it's Science Day and it's Reading Day. And on Tuesday it might be English Day, and it might be Math and PE in English that day. And they are so seamless, but by the time they're 4th or 5th graders, it will blow you away.
It's almost like a Rosetta Stone kind of
It's-
experience. You know,
it
you
is.
learn from each other.
So what's our barrier? We got to get these dual language teachers. So we've got a bill in the legislature right now, and we've already funded it with some federal money, but we need the legislature to come in where we are looking at residency models. How many of you want to get medical care from a doctor who never went through a residency? So why do our kids get taught by people who have never been through a residency? Because we have this old student teaching model. It's been okay. You get a semester in the classroom. Good luck to you. Unpaid, often outside of your college environment, so you're paying rent at the lease in Pullman that won't let you out of it. You're also paying rent at your new place where you're student teaching. It's for a semester. You don't get a lot of mentorship. We're blowing that up. We're starting with cohorts of special ed teachers and bilingual education teachers. We're paying them for a year like any medical doctor would get a residency. They get the full experience, they get the full mentorship, they can actually pay their bills, they stay with the profession longer because they don't have as much debt. We are transforming stuff, and that's the kind of thing that we're doing. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yes. Wendy.
Getting back to later Bill's schedules, Keene School District meeting on Monday, which just that. I have 2 teenage grandsons, and I would like a later start, but it's difficult because, and Puyallup, like every district, has a bus driver shortage.
Yeah, yep.
So they're trying to figure out how to, do the transportation. And then athletics. A lot of the students at the meeting spoke about how if they got out at 4 o'clock, 9 o'clock start time, 4 o'clock, and it wouldn't give enough time for sports. So those are kind of big obstacles of having high school students start later.
Especially in the Northwest. Our winters are awfully dark at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So lots of people start raising concerns about when kids are going home, getting off buses, making that, quarter-mile walk from the bus stop to home. And so it is, if you ever want to get on a school board and then get unelected rapidly, change your boundaries or change your start time. That is the surest way to one term, okay? Even though it is important work, it is peril, yeah.
A tremendous struggle that kids bring to school is the stress that their parents are under due to not having insecure housing.
Yeah, yeah.
So how is it? What is the state doing to support that? And I heard you say they're pushing for free lunch. I'd love to see free breakfast too.
It's both in our proposal,
But
yep.
housing, good.
Yep.
But housing in general is such huge stress, especially after, not after, in the middle of the pandemic, because that's what we are.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
especially in the west coast of the state. Well, you know what? It's the whole state now.
It really is. It really is. So the question is really housing instability and the impact on kids, and what is the state doing about that? So there are multiple agencies that take this task. Obviously, the governor's office leads this, Department of Commerce with housing grants, and then we have lots of assistance programs through the Human Services Safety Net. My piece of that world is we do a data collection every year to help folks understand the impact on kids directly. So we have 40,000 homeless youth in this state. 4% of our school-age population is considered homeless. They are not all unsheltered, but they are all absolutely feeling the impact of the instability of housing, and it's getting a little bit worse right now. Our job, following some legislation several years ago, is we have a homeless liaison in every single school district. And it's in the bigger districts, they're able to put these folks in every building. They often have other roles, and it's tough for them. But their job is to try to identify this, and then obviously we don't supply housing, we don't issue vouchers, we don't have resource for that. We connect them though with community partners whose job it is to try to connect them with secure housing. And sometimes we have short-term money that can stabilize a family a little bit, mostly private dollars and foundation dollars and a little bit from the state. But our job is to really be a liaison for the family. The goal based on the research is stability. So we do everything we can to keep that kid in their school because, like I said, bouncing that kid around while they're surfing couch surfing or the family's struggling, that is the biggest impact on kids' academic success. So, you know, I grew up on public assistance, and the one thing I can tell you is I did have housing stability. So as much as the financial struggle was there, I didn't bounce around from school to school. And all the research tells us that even that intervention of stability is really big. So you've heard of McKinney-Vento, very, very challenging, underfunded by the feds, but the policy is keep kids in their home school, even if the parents have to move 20 miles away to find housing. Bus them if they have to that homeschool to keep those relationships and the continuity of that work. And it is really hard for school districts when they're spending money on an individual kid moving 30, 60 miles up I-5. No criticism of them, it's just very difficult when it isn't fully funded. But those are our roles. Stabilize, create the industry, the education partners and the community-based partners, but then mostly it's a handoff to local housing authorities and to the safety net system. I wanted a really hard question, like how many games are the Mariners going to win this year? Like, the answer is 99, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, this is a little bit different topic, but what's the status of civics education? My understanding, and I may be way wrong, was that it's been dropped and that we don't have mandatory civics education.
I'm so glad you asked this question. Okay. So when I was elected 6 years ago, my very first act was to undo a lawsuit where my office was suing school districts. And the reason was it was just a forced legal battle, get the legislature to fully fund schools. It wasn't a sinister thing, but that was my first act. I got to tell you that because I remember so clearly saying to my team, it took me one stroke of the pen, like, we're getting out of the lawsuit. And the next thing I said is, where's my bill to require civics in school again? Which we got done in the very first year. You talk about bipartisan support, right? Both sides of this, overwhelming support. We have a half a credit. So there are 3 social studies credits required in high school, a half of those. So a half a year, semester-long course is a required civics course. And so it's back as a requirement. A little bit tough for districts to shuffle, but now they've all done that, which is very, very good. I will say my next endeavor is to go beyond civics, which is often structure, right? The structure of government, the role of government, how a bill becomes a law, its institutions and systems. My next foray into this is to embed in multiple subjects media literacy. Small m, right? Our young people, until they have fully got that frontal lobe figured out, think that TikTok is a news source. And we've got an entire political party that thinks Channel 13 is a news source. Sorry, not Channel 13, whatever your Fox affiliate is, but the locals are actually pretty good. So our goal is not to be partisan or political. Honestly, that is not our job, right? Families get to make that choice. It's to help our young people understand who wants your eyeball time? Why do they want you on screens? And what is it that they benefit from? And when we teach young people about that, they start to realize that when they do a search, and then the next 10 advertisements that hit them follow that search, they begin to understand that they're being tracked and monitored everywhere. And they're starting to learn that my own thoughts are actually increasingly influenced by what people sell me. So I start believing a narrative about the things that are pushed upon me. The other thing we try to teach them in media literacy is look out for that reinforcing system where you come to a question, a civic question, a political question, a religious question. If you don't spend the time really thinking about all of the sources coming to you, you get bad information. This system is an algorithm machine. It's going to replicate what you put into it because it makes you feel good. When I put something into this, it's going to keep telling me that what I believe is right by sending me news sources and feeds about that. So part of media literacy is helping students understand you have to be more intentional around hearing both sides of an issue. We should be able to sit down differently on an idea, exchange, and still go out on the playground and be friends. Those skills literally start in school. And when we avoid that, we are surprised when 40-year-olds who listen to 2 diametrically opposed cable news channels can't even talk about politics anymore. They can't even talk about it. That's the civility that's breaking down. So civics is in now, and we're moving towards civility with media literacy. We're rewriting the standards now. It'll be in English language arts, it'll be in social studies and a few other subjects. And it is all about helping young people finally understand why this thing has made billion-dollar companies and is basically destroying mental health. Yeah.
I do want to give you a chance to answer. There's some articles out about this private group that is handling most disabled students.
Yeah, NPAs.
And I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, great. So about 14% of the students in our state have had are under an IEP. They have been identified as needing special services. You all know this as special education. A fraction of them, but an important group of them, that IEP process has resulted in families and school districts determining the school district may not have the resources or the supports to deliver the services. In many cases, these are day programs. The student needs an intensive 8-hour program for maybe 6 weeks or 20 weeks or maybe even a year longer. So there are facilities that provide this. Some of them are schools. They were designed as schools focusing on this. Some of them are medical facilities, because you'd be stunned to know, or maybe you wouldn't, that the fastest growing share of students in these non-public agencies as NPAs are students experiencing eating disorders. So they go to day programs because they need a strict monitoring not only of academics, but also calories and exactly how to work through the psychology and the mental health aspects of an eating disorder, eating disability. So what we have done is come to understand that there's been some bad practices in a few of those, for sure. We do investigate them. They are on a review cycle. Our challenge at OSPI, and we take full responsibility for this, is there is no feedback loop directly to us when there's a complaint. So when a family says something's not going right here, my student was grabbed or they're not getting the curriculum they need, that has historically been because the local school district has a contract with that NPA. That local district in that IEP is making the decision on whether this placement makes sense. And it's about 400 kids out of 140,000. So it isn't a lot, but it's important. Those are 400 kids who deserve the best in the world, and we didn't give it to them. So there's a bill in the legislature right now that we have put forward as agency request that says we need the authority to have those agencies directly report to OSPI when there's a complaint process, so that we can immediately investigate and not wait to see if a district decides it was bad enough to then tell OSPI. So our oversight was too weak. That's the bottom line. And we saw some kids, I will say, in allegation with issues of physical abuse and isolation. So we're trying to get rid of all the isolation in the future. No kid should ever be isolated or locked up. That's different than needing a place to cool down or calm down in conflict. That's different than locking a door, right? So we're getting rid of that, and we need the information immediately for rapid investigation. I will say the other thing is there's about 49 or maybe 50 kids in our state now whose cases are so significant that they're in out-of-state treatment facilities. And those are the other ones where we're making sure that we have this connection. Those families are generally quite pleased with that support, but we've also seen issues of neglect and abuse out there. And so we're starting to put those on a review process and making sure that the family is still committed to those programs, because the family really should drive this decision. Very important. I'm glad you asked that question. They're called NPAs. That's what you're going to read about, non-public agencies. They don't do a lot in our state, but they do about 400 in-state kids and about 50 kids out of state. And we're going to get a lot better at the oversight of that. You all are amazing. Thank you. Thank you.